Shall we start? Now, first one, good morning. The first one is the revision of our last class. Now, when we are discussing about our revision of our last class, now we have discussed about which all things in our last class. Now, majorly we have discussed about it is two important things in our last class. One about we call it as the planets as well as our dwarf planets. And the second one we have discussed about a topic called as moons as well as which one? Our terminologies. About our which one? About our terminologies. Now when we are discussing about a topic called as the planets. What is planets? I have said according to we call it as International Astronomical Union. Now if you want to call a particular the astronomical object as a planet, it need to satisfy how many features? It need to satisfy three important features. Which is that three important features? Now first one, it should orbit around which one? Orbit around a parent star. Be cautious, first one. Second one, it should have its own which one? It should have its own mass and we call it as the gravitational force. Second one. The third major important one here is it should have a dedicated path on its own. It should not cross the other orbits. It should have its own dedicated the path. Yes or no? This is about it should have its own orbit, the mass and gravitational force, and the third one we call it should have its own orbital force also. Done. This we call it as planet. How many planets do we have in our solar system? Now we have 8 planets in our solar system. Divided it into how many types? Divided it into 2 types. Which is that 2 types? One we call it as inner planets and the second one we call it as outer planets. Now when we are talking about inner planets and outer planets, we have discussed about the 2 important differences also. Now one we call what is the location of we call inner planets. It is near to the sun, whereas outer planets are farther from the sun. Now which one has higher size? The outer planets has we call it as higher size. Now it has beautiful rings also. Maximum number of we call it as the moons or we call it as satellites also being found. It is away from our planets. That we have discussed. And the next comes we call it dwarf planets. Now what is dwarf planets according to International Astronomical Union? If it is not meaning this third one, if it is not having a dedicated path on its own, we will be calling it as what? Dwarf planets. Now examples of dwarf planets. Now Pluto, Ceres, now Euphoria. Now all this comes under where? All this comes under we call it as dwarf planets on its own. Done. And next one we call it as the moons. Now when we are talking about a moon, now our moons concept we call it the satellite concept. Now which one has maximum moons? Now Saturn has maximum moons, perfect. And now how many moons are present on the surface of Mars? How many? It is 2. Which is that 2? The Phobos and we call it as Deimos. That we have discussed. And the terminologies related to we call it as the planets. Now we have talked about we call it as the different terminologies. One we call it as what is meteoroid. What is meteoroid? What is meteoroid? The subpart of asteroid. That we call it meteoroid. Now if it is burning completely in our atmosphere, we call it as meteor. Perfect. It's also called as shooting star. Perfect. Now the last one, if it is hitting the ground. Now there are 2 important belts. We call it as there are 2 important belts. Which is the 2 important belts we have? Asteroid belt and Kuiper belt. Now asteroid belt is present between which 2 planets? Perfect. Mars and Jupiter. Mars on the west and Jupiter on the east. And second one we call it Kuiper belt. Now Kuiper belt is present after which one? After we call it as after which one? It is Neptune. After Neptune we call it as the Kuiper belt. Now the materials which are made up of asteroid belt are called as rocky materials. Majorly the rocky substances are rocks. When we are talking about a Kuiper belt, it is made up of dust particles, icy materials, the gases. It is made up of, we call it as a Kuiper belt part. Done. And next major point one comes are, we call it as, it is when the materials are coming from the comet, or sorry, when the materials are coming from, we call it as the Kuiper belt, we call it as comet. Now this comet are made up of, we call it as icy materials, the dust particles, the gases, we call it as the comet's belt. Done. We've seen all the things. That's what we call it as majorly about our the chapter 2. That chapter 2 we call it as origin and evolution of, we call it as the Earth. We have talked about universe, we have talked about Earth, we have talked about solar system, we have talked about planets. See, whenever you are discussing about any chapter, now you should have a particular blueprint, and that based on that particular blueprint, you need to discuss one by one. Yes or no? Now this is about our chapter. And third one, newcomer. Newcomer, first class. Okay, you are online. Okay, your name? Asha. Okay, 3 days you didn't come.
I didn't come.
Only 3 days.
Because I'm working.
Okay. Where are you working?
London Stock Exchange.
London Stock Exchange. Oh, nice. Oh, you are not working in BSc? Bombay Stock Exchange, why not BSc? Why London Stock Exchange? You are not Indian then?
I'm Indian.
Okay, you want more money, so you are working in London. Okay, that's not it. Okay, then we can learn some more things about the stock exchange and all. Is that okay? Now the next one, dividing called as chapter 3. Now is it chapter 3? Now the chapter 3. Now what is this chapter 3? Now chapter 3 talks about our evolution of which one? The spheres. Now this chapter 3 consists of part A and we call it as part B. Now what does part A talks about? Now part A of this chapter 3 talks about, majorly we call it as, now evolution of which one? Evolution of, we call it as the spheres. Evolution of the spheres. And second one we call it as our interiors about the earth. Now be cautious. Interiors about the earth. Today we will discuss about this complete chapter. Interior about the earth. Let's see. Most probably we won't be in a position to complete, but we'll see. Now when we are discussing about our part 1, be cautious. Now what should be our blueprint? When we are discussing about this our chapter 1 or the chapter we call it as 3, under this chapter 3 we will be discussing about our the two important parts, the section A and section B, or part A and part B. Now when we are discussing about the part A1, we call it as evolution of the spheres. Now when we are discussing about our spheres, there are three important spheres. Which are that three important spheres? Which are that three important spheres we have? Perfect. One we call it as lithosphere. One we call it a litho and we call it as a sphere. What does litho means? Land. Sphere means a region. Land region. And second one, we will discuss about how our lithosphere is being formed. Now what is lithosphere in a simpler manner? Don't say land region. What is the definition of lithosphere? It is Earth's outer layer up till how many kilometers? So outer means it can be, it's up till 6,500 also. Now until how many? Now lithosphere is until 200 kilometers. The outermost layer, perfect. Whatever we said was right, it's the outermost layer, but we have a dedicated kilometers up till how many kilometers? 200. Why 200? It is, if it is oceanic crust also maximum 100. Crust is 100. It is majorly we call it as both, including oceanic crust, including continental crust is up till 100 kilometers. Now this lithosphere is up till we call it as now 200 kilometers. Now this 200 kilometers includes both our crust. Now I will discuss all the things and show the images also. It includes both our crust, uppermost part of our interior of the earth. Now when we are talking about interior, what do we mean by interiors? Now all these are interiors. What is interior? Within. Now what are the decorations? What are the lightings here? All this comes under where? Interiors. What is interiors now? Within. It's not outside, it is within. Now interiors. Now when we are talking about the interiors of the earth, there are the three classifications of interiors of the earth. Now when we are talking about, this is about our earth. Now this is we call as within the earth. Now within the earth are being divided into now three concentric layers. Which is the three concentric layers? It is one we call it as the core, second one we call it as mantle, and third one crust. Now we will be studying about the crust, we'll be studying about mantle, we'll be studying about the core part also. Now we'll also talk about the crust is being divided into two things. The continental crust and oceanic crust. We will talk about upper mantle and lower mantle. And we will talk about inner core and outer core. Now it is made up of which all things? Is it solid, liquid, semi-molten? We will discuss that. And it is made up of which all minerals? We will talk about minerals. Abundant with respect to our crust, abundant with respect to our earth, we will discuss. We will talk about which is the boundary line we have, which is the boundary line we have. What does we call it as? Mohorovicic discontinuity. What is this? Rapidity. What is this we call it as? It is Conrad discontinuity. What is Lehman discontinuity? We will discuss. While discussing about interior, be cautious. While discussing about interior of the earth, we will talk about the divisions of the earth. Interior, crust, core and mantle. Again, crust has been divided into two things. Core has been divided into two things. Mantle has been divided into two things. Now we will talk about the discontinuous gap between two things. We will discuss. What is Conrad? What is Rapidity? What is Lehman? What is, we call it as the Mohorovicic discontinuity. We will see that with images. And next one we will also talk about majorly, we call it as, majorly about our, we call it as, it is about our, the minerals. Which all minerals constitute a dominant one? It is the crust. Which one? It is SEMA. It is, exactly, it is, now it is silicon and aluminum constitute maximum, though we call it as the continental crust. Whereas with respect to we call oceanic crust, it is, we call it as Sial and SEMA. That we'll see. What is silicon, what is iron, what is magnesium, we'll see all this. And when we talk about a complete earth, which one constitute dominant one? Iron. Nickel and iron constitute dominant one. We'll see this. When we are discussing about interiors. When we are discussing about our evolution of spheres, we will be discussing about our three important spheres. That we call it as lithosphere, second one, atmosphere, and the third one we call it as, the third one we call it as hydro. Hope you are getting it. Hydrosphere. Done. Now what is atmosphere, what is hydrosphere, and what is atmosphere? The integration of all these three. Biosphere. Now what does hydrosphere means? Hydro means water, sphere means region. What atmosphere means? The gas, the gaseous region. Now we'll see all the things one by one. How this atmosphere, how this hydrosphere, how this lithosphere is being evolved. We'll see one. But first one, under this chapter, we will discuss about which one. First this, and after some 1 hour, 1.5 hour, we will move towards our part B also. Now why this two divisions, sir, in our chapter? Because the questions will be either from this or from this. One question must be there from this or this. From chapter 3 there must be one question, that is we call it part A or part B. We'll discuss. Now first one, the first and foremost one we call it as our major important one. It is our part A. What is part A here? What is part A? Now part A majorly talks about our which one? Evolution of which one? Spheres. Now this evolution of spheres, under this evolution we will be discussing about our major one called as, it is how our it is lithosphere created, how our atmosphere created, how our hydrosphere created, that we'll discuss. First one, it is lithosphere. Be cautious. What do you mean by evolution means? Is it a sudden process or a gradual process? Gradual. As soon as I say evolution, it's a gradual one. It's a continuous one. Yes or no? Second one we call it as atmosphere. We'll see all those things A to Z. And the third one we call it as hydrosphere. See, whatever we are discussing, that should be in your tips, not in your brain. Come, we'll see all those things in an organized fashion. That we call it as the three parts. We'll be discussing all those things one by one. But first, understand my concept here. First one, what is litho and what is sphere? Now, the litho means we call it as litho means a land. Sphere means what? A region. The sphere means we call it as region, or it can be shape. Also, majorly we call it as region. And the second one, what does atmo means? Atmo means gaseous. The sphere means region. Now, what is the gaseous region means? Now, up till how many kilometers we call it atmosphere? Now, up till 400 kilometers we call it as atmosphere. After 400 kilometers we call it as the space, outer space. Done. Now, the third one, hydro. Hydro means water and sphere means what? Region. Now this we call lithosphere means land region. So the question is, this is our earth. Now up till how many kilometers we call it as lithosphere? Now up till how many kilometers? Now up till we call it as, now our radius of our earth we call it as 6,300 approximate kilometers. 6,300. Actually, very small. 6,300. But up till we call it as, up till how many kilometers we call it lithosphere? Now up till we call it as the 200 kilometers we call it as lithosphere. Now this lithosphere includes which all things? Lithosphere, be cautious, lithosphere includes crust, the complete crust which includes both our continental crust as well as our oceanic crust also. It includes both our continental crust as well as our oceanic crust also. Includes our continental crust as well as our oceanic crust also. And second one we call it as, it also includes a most important region, we call it as asthenosphere. I'll show you all this one by one. This also includes one, asthenosphere. What does this asthenosphere means? Now observe. Now this is about our earth. Now earth is being divided into how many concentric layers? How many concentric layers? 3. Which is the 3? The core, second one, the mantle, and third one, the crust. Yes or no? Again, this core is being divided into which one? It is inner core and second one, outer core. Now this mantle is being divided into how many? The two things. One is called as upper mantle and lower mantle. And this crust is being divided into which one? The two things. One is oceanic crust and we call it as continental crust. Now within this upper mantle itself, we have uppermost part of upper mantle, we call it as what? Asthenosphere. We call this region as what? Asthenosphere. Now can I take this as vertical one now? Can I go for, rather than writing every time this concentric one, can I go for this vertical layers? One is which one? The core, second one, mantle, last one, uppermost part of upper earth, crust. Let us first understand and later on we discuss. First one, this core is being divided into which one? Inner core and outer core. And second one, mantle is being divided into which one? Lower mantle and upper mantle. Now the last one, this crust is being divided into which one? It is majorly we call it as oceanic crust and continental crust. My simple and basic question is, common sense question is, as one moves from uppermost crust towards, we call it as inner crust or the inner core. Now, what will be the density? Okay. Now, will it start to increase? The density start to increase, or the density starts to reduce? Second one, what about the temperature? Increases. Now, if I am moving from, we call it as I am moving from surface towards the inner part. Now, temperature starts to increase. And what about density? Increases. Done. Now, the first kind of almost question is, sir, what do you mean by lithosphere? What do you mean by lithosphere? What do you mean by lithosphere? Now, lithosphere, now can I say, this one has which one? The core. This one has mantle. This one we call it as crust. Yes or no? Now, crust is until we call it as the crust until 100 kilometers, the mantle until 2900 kilometers, until 2900. Now, this is until we call it as approximately, I can take it as 6,000 radius of the earth, we call interior of the earth, we call it as how many? I'll show the exact numbers also, but first understand. Now, sir, now what do you mean by lithosphere? What do you mean by lithosphere? Now, this uppermost part of upper mantle, it's been divided into what? Now, uppermost part of upper mantle, we have which one? We have a weak zone. We have a semi-molten magma. When this magma comes out, we call it as what? Lava. When this magma, when it is escaping via the fault region, now whatever the materials are present here, we call it as what? We call it as magma. Now, when this materials outpours, and if it is coming out above the surface of the earth, we call it as what? We call it as lava. Be cautious here. We call it as lava. And this complete setup we call it as volcanoes. The complete setup from the materials which are moving or which is erupting from the weak zone and solidification, we call it as what? We call it as volcanoes. Major volcanoes. Now the materials are present here. Which one? Magma. And the layer we call it as asthenosphere. Astheno means weak zone. Sphere means a zone. Weak zone. Now when it is weak, automatically it will start to completely erupt. Now when it is erupting, automatically the magma which will outpour it. Now when it is outpouring it, we call it as which one? We call it as lava. We call lava, and this complete region we call as now this region, now completely till we call it as how many kilometers? Can I show an image now? Observe this. Now this is about our three concentric layers. Now these three concentric layers, they are going for vertical one. Now what do you mean by crust? Up till how many kilometers? Up till how many kilometers? It is 100 kilometers. Up till 100 kilometers we call it as crust. Now this is crust. How many kilometers? 100 kilometers. Now what is lithosphere? What is lithosphere? Now this region. So this. Now up till how many kilometers crust or how many kilometers lithosphere? Up till 200 kilometers. Now it is consisting of which one things? Crust and we call it as asthenosphere. What is asthenosphere means? Now weak area. Now what is the material which are present here? We call it as magma. When it comes out above the surface, lava. And its complete setup we call it as volcanization, or complete setup we call it as volcanoes. Is it fine now? Done? First one, what? First one we call it as, first one, what is, first one dividing called a lithosphere. First one we call it as lithosphere. First one we call it as lithosphere. First one, what does lithosphere means? Litho means land. Sphere means region. Litho means land. Sphere means region. Second one, lithosphere consists of crust. Which all crust? Which all crust? Now both continental crust and oceanic crust consist of continental crust and oceanic crust plus asthenosphere. Asthenosphere, what does asthenosphere means? Now asthenosphere means weak zone or weak region. Weak zone, or we call it as weak layer. Weak zone, or we call it as weak layer. Yes or no? Weak zone, or we call it as weak layer, or we call it uppermost pattern.
So does asthenosphere consist of ignition? Like, does it consist of ignition rock?
No, next stop. Now that's not ignition rock, but that is magma.
Like semi-molten condition.
See, igneous rock, if it is rock, it should be formed above the crust, or it is on the surface of the earth.
Like if they are considering that part in lithosphere, it cannot be totally molten.
Exactly, semi-molten. It is semi-molten state. That we'll see. Now, not now, while discussing about interior of the earth. Part B. Now, we are only discussing about the evolution part. For that, I am giving you one brief idea or just intro. Just intro. Not okay. I hope it is clear. No, we'll see. Not evolution. Next one we call it as the crust, and we call it as uppermost part of upper mantle, or in a simpler manner we call it which one? In a simpler manner we call it as asthenosphere. Asthenosphere means a weak zone. Now this weak zone, it is made up of which all things? Made up of semi-molten we call it as semi-molten state. Neither solid nor liquid, semi-molten. Semi-molten we call it as asthenosphere. Asthenosphere. This complete region we call it what? Complete region we call it as lithosphere. We call lithosphere up till how many kilometers? Up till 200 kilometers. It includes all things. It includes our crust. It includes our uppermost part of upper mantle. Uppermost part of upper mantle. This crust includes continental crust. This continental crust. Why continents are above? Because it has lesser density. Why oceanic crust is below this continental crust? Density is more. Comparatively, density is more. If the density is less, it will start to float. If the density is higher, it will start to sink. Yes or no? Yes. Now, the crust is divided into two things. One is CC and second one we call it as OC. Oceanic crust and continental crust. This uppermost part, upper mantle, we call it as which one? Asthenosphere. Now, up till how many kilometers? 200 kilometers. Now, till 2900 kilometers, we call it what? Mantle approximately is till 6400, we call it as, it is the core. 6378 or 6400, we don't know exactly. And no one has reached more than 12 kilometers. All these are hypotheses, all these are approximate range. Whatever is it, because no one has reached. It is 6400 is also fine, 6378 is also fine, but according to NCERT it is 6378. 6378 is our the core mantle. the radius. Done. This about we call it as the three important layers. Second one observe. Next one given called as. Now how are lithosphere created? How are lithosphere is being evolved? How are lithosphere created? Now lithosphere, atmosphere and hydrosphere. Now the evolution, now is it a separate process or it's a continuous process? All those three processes took place in a continuous manner. What do you think? Now all these three evolution took place on a continuous basis simultaneously. But first one, understand, first don't write, just understand later on writing. First one, understand, it is this about our earth. Now earth was plain, there was no layers. Earlier there was no layers was. Now there was no layer, there was no crust, there was no mantle, there was no core also. But when we are talking about, we call it as primordial earth. What do you mean by primordial earth? What do you mean by primordial earth? Primitive earth, or we call it as earlier earth. Now, how was the earlier earth? Was there a presence of layers? Or there was no layers? Now, earlier earth, there was no layers. The earth was plain. Now, when the earth was plain, how it led to the creation of present day layers? How it led to the creation of present day layers? Now, because of the different stages, because of the different steps. Now, that steps we call the first and the foremost one, we call it as one moves from it is surface towards the interior. Now, what will be the temperature? Higher temperature. Now, temperature will be higher. What about density? Now, higher density. Now, as we move from it is top towards the interior part, temperature was higher, density was also higher. Now, when the temperature was higher, don't you think? Now, all the materials will start to melt. Now, it won't be such an intense temperature where it can undergo nuclear fusion reaction. Be cautious here. It is not such an extreme temperature where it can undergo nuclear fusion reaction, but it can melt the different materials. Now it is unequal masses, unequal temperature, gravitational force was present with the interior part of the earth. But the simple one, as we move from interior or as we move from surface to interior part, the temperature was higher, density was higher. Now what will happen in the second stage? The melting of this molecules will take place. Melting of this materials will take place. When the melting of materials or the melting of molecules takes place, what happens? What happens here is now melting takes place. When the melting takes place, what happens? Now lighter molecules will start to sink towards the bottom or will start to float. Now when the melting takes place, automatically more denser materials will start to sink towards the bottom. Now more denser materials will start to sink towards the bottom. What about the lighter materials? Lighter will start to float. Now the moderate one will start to present where? At we call it as at the middle one, and that we call it as one is we call as crust. Moderate one we call it as mantle, and a highly denser one we call as what? Now why it is highly denser? And why it is higher in weight? Because this inner part consists of, we call it as, inner part consists of which one? Iron and nickel. Now iron and nickel, is it lighter in weight or higher in weight? Now this lighter one, it is made up of, we call it as Sial and Sima. Sial and we call it as Sima. What is Sial and Sima? Silicon, aluminium, silicon, iron and magnesium. Now this we call it as, now the lighter materials are being pushed towards where? Pushed towards the surface, whereas the higher weighted one is being pushed towards where? Is being sinked towards the bottom, and that led to the creation of what? That led to the creation of, we call it as, three important layers. Is there three important layers? Crust, core, or the crust, mantle, and the core has been created. And obviously it led to the creation of which one? Lithosphere also. Yes or no, boss? Done? Can we note down this? First one dividing called as, which one? Evolution of lithosphere. Evolution of lithosphere. Evolution of lithosphere under first thing, stage 1. Stage 1, what is stage 1? Due to gradual increase in density. Due to gradual increase in density. Gradual increase in density, the temperature starts to increase. Temperature starts to increase. Done? Temperature starts to increase. Second stage. Stage 2. What is stage 2? Material starts to melt. Material starts to melt. Material starts to melt. Second stage. What is the third stage? When the material starts to melt, what happens in the third stage? It is lighter materials will start to. Lighter materials are being pushed towards the surface. Lighter materials are being pushed towards the surface. What about the heavier one? Heavier one are being sinked towards the core or sinked towards the center. Heavier materials are being sinked towards the center. Bracket. Highlight. Oh, you went to bank? Oh, nice. Then you'll be having some good money now. No money. Okay. Now the third one, it is the lighter materials are being pushed towards the, it is pushed towards the surface, whereas higher density materials are being pushed towards where? The center part. Center part, bracket, knife edge, nickel and iron, and which one is being pushed towards the, which one is being pushed towards the surface? Sial and Sima. Sial and Sima. Sial means silicon, aluminium. It is next one, silicon, iron and magnesium. Silicon, iron and magnesium. Yes. See, you cannot say. See, like, does it mean that only core has only nickel and iron? Just a guess. Can you say that? No. Based on the dominant, we'll be saying it has because of nickel and iron. That does not mean that only iron and nickel has. In the same manner, when we're talking about a crust, we cannot say that. We cannot say that only it is silicon and aluminium has. Even iron also, even nickel also. If that is the case, how are we getting nickel? How are we getting silver? Yes, sir, but dominant is, we call it dominant as silicon, aluminium, dominant as silicon, iron and magnesium. Done? We'll see that also. Based on dominant one, it is naming it. Done? Is it clear? Crust, mantle and the core. Is it fine now? Now, the last one we call it as, this led to the creation of, we call it as, this led to the creation of which one? It is, this led to the creation of the three important layers. This led to the creation of three important layers. Which is our three important layers? Concentric layer, which is that? The core, mantle and crust. Perfect. Crust, mantle and core, or core, mantle and crust. Now, which is the densest layer? Which is the densest one is core, or it can be inner core. Which is the lightest one now? Crust. Which is the crust one? Continental crust. Now, which is near to our surface, it is denser. Which one is near to our? It is the core part or the central part, which is very denser in nature. Very denser in nature, and this we call it as evolution of lithosphere. Is it fine now? Pakka, is it clear? Done. Now we'll see again and again, not an issue in our part B, but this is about our lithosphere. Done. The next one given called as atmosphere or evolution of atmosphere. Is it fine now? Lithosphere fine. Now we had a primordial earth. Now this primordial earth is plane, but with unequal, we call it densities. Now when it is unequal densities, the temperature started to increase. When the temperature started to increase, automatically the melting takes place. When it is melting, automatically the higher temperature will start to sink towards the bottom. Water lighter one will start to float. That led to creation of the three concentric layers, and that three concentric layers we call it as the core, mantle, and the crust part is created. Is it fine? Clear, Paka? Next one, atmosphere. What is atmosphere? Now this is Earth. Now the gaseous part. The gaseous part which is present above the surface of the earth we call as what? Atmosphere. This we call atmosphere. Now up till how many kilometers we call atmosphere? I have already said up till 400 kilometers we call it as atmosphere, and after 400 kilometers we call it what? It is the outer space, or generally we call it space. Now first one we call it as. Now, what is the present day gases which are present in the atmosphere? Abundant one, nitrogen, oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide. Does it mean that only 4 gases are present? No. Why are we calling this as only this? Major is this, we call it atmosphere is made up of nitrogen. Second one is the oxygen. Third one is argon, carbon dioxide. Now it has a number of minute gases also. Even dust particles, even pollen grains, even aerosols. Now all those things are present in our atmosphere, but majorly we have nitrogen, majorly we have our oxygen, majorly we have argon, the carbon dioxide. First question is how does atmosphere created? How does present day atmosphere created? Now since our earlier times we had this nitrogen. Since our earlier times we had nitrogen and 79%, we had oxygen, we had argon, we had carbon dioxide. But how this present day atmosphere created? How? Now what was that? Now in our the primordial earth, in our traditional earth, in our earlier earth. Now, what type of gases were being abundant in our atmosphere? Hydrogen, helium. At least you are aware about this. Now, how this hydrogen and helium was being removed? Now, when it is hydrogen and helium, can there be existence of life? Now, how this hydrogen and helium was being removed from our earth? It is not decreasing temperature because of solar winds, because of solar flares. Now understand the present day atmosphere is this. Now when we are talking about our earlier earth, this earlier earth we call as what? Which one? Primordial earth. This primordial earth is also called as? This primordial earth is also called as what? Traditional earth. This primordial earth is also called as traditional earth. Now when we are talking about our traditional earth or primordial earth, now the traditional earth or primordial earth was made up of which gases abundantly. Which abundant gases? We call it as hydrogen and we call it as helium. Why hydrogen and helium? Because in our complete universe, which gases was abundant? Hydrogen and helium. Now via our Big Bang theory also, which is the first atom created? Which is the second one created? Helium. Now in our planets also we had this two things. But the second one here is now how this primordial atmosphere removed. Now this primordial atmosphere is being removed via in stage 2. How are primordial atmosphere removed? Now our primordial atmosphere is being removed via, we call it as solar winds or via solar flares. Now don't you think because of the influence of solar winds or because of the influence of solar flares, now this hydrogen and helium is being removed? Yes or no? And that removal is being created because of an impact of which one? Solar flares, because of solar winds, because of, we call it as solar radiations. Yes or no? Now when it is being removed, don't you think our earth is plain now? Now it is, we call it as, it is majorly we call it as all this atmosphere is being removed via the influence of which one? Why the influence of which one? So this first from west. What happens? Now all the atmosphere is removed. When all the atmosphere is removed, now continuously our lithosphere is also being created. Now when the different layers are being created in our interior of the earth, don't you think when the different, it is, we call it as reorganization is taking place, don't you think gases will start to escape from our interior? Yes or no, boss? Now I've said this lithosphere, atmosphere and hydrosphere is a continuous process. Now even our lithosphere, when it is undergoing creation of the different layers, don't you think whatever the gases which are being stuck in this lithosphere starts to escape? Now that escaping we call it as degassing process. What is degassing? Whatever the gases which being stored with respect to our within our, we call it as our earth, started to escape. What type of gases which are present with respect to the interior part of the earth? It is interior part of the earth we call it as abundantly which one? Carbon dioxide, abundantly methane, CH4, ammonia, moisture content, water, moisture content. All those things were being released from the interior part of the earth via the fault regions for the gaps. And this process we call it what? This process we call it as what? Degassing. What is degassing? What do you mean by degassing? What do you mean by degassing? Now whatever the gases which were being stored with respect to the earth started to release. Why will it start to release? Why will it start to release? Because even now we call it as lighter metals are moving towards the surface and the denser metals are moving towards the core. During that period of time, there is a fault region created, and via this fault, the gases are being released. Via this, we call it as via the process. It is via the degasification process. Gases are being released. What type of gases are released here? What type of gas are released here? We call it as abundantly carbon dioxide. Abundantly, we call it as methane, followed by nitrogen, followed by ammonia, followed by moisture content is being released. Yes or no, boss? Now, if it is methane, if it is carbon dioxide, if it is, we call it as, if it is the moisture content, can there be existence of life? Why not? Now, it is now oxygen required for animals. That does not mean that there cannot be existence of life. Don't you think algae can get it is originated? Algae, smaller organisms, algae, bryophyta, plants. Carbon is there, methane is there, moisture content is there, ammonia is there, building blocks of the organism. Now, when there is existence of all this, we call as gaseous substances, there creates an existence of, we call it as life, and that life we call it as primitive organisms. I'm not saying highly advanced like human beings. Primitive organisms will exist. Now, when primitive organisms are there, mostly plants. Now, don't you think plants absorb carbon dioxide and releases which one? Oxygen. Now, can there be existence of animals? Yes. Hope you're getting it. In this manner, our present day atmosphere has been created. But the challenge is there is more amount of carbon dioxide. If it is more amount of carbon dioxide, I have already said, more amount of carbon dioxide leads to the heating up of the planet itself. Because this carbon dioxide is transparent to what? Incoming short wave solar radiation. But it is opaque to what? Opaque to outgoing infrared long wave radiation. It leads to what? It leads to, we call it as higher temperature. Why climate change happening? Because of this. Why climate change is happening? Because of CO2. When CO2 is abundant, it is transparent to which one? Incoming short wave solar radiation. But what about outgoing? We call it as long wave infrared radiation. It is opaque. It will block. If it is blocking. It leads to what? It leads to, we call it as higher, we call it as temperature near to the ground. But now we need to reduce this CO2. How to reduce the CO2 to less than 0.05%? This should get abundant. Oxygen should be ranked at number 2. And third one should be, we call it argon, and fourth one should be carbon dioxide. We need to reduce this carbon dioxide. How to reduce this? Now we can reduce via, we call it as rainfall. When this carbon dioxide, when it is mixes with the moisture content, automatically it gives rise to, we call it as carbonic ions. It gives rise to, we call it as the carbonic ions, and that carbonic ions have been stored in present day, we call it as oceans. Hope you are getting it. Yes or no? Now I'll repeat, understand. Now atmosphere and hydrosphere are also being created simultaneously also. Now later on I'll repeat. First one we call it as, now I said there is a primordial earth. Now what does this primordial earth means? Primitive earth. Now primitive earth means traditional earth. Now what is traditional earth? Now traditional earth, now it is made up of, we call it as primordial gases, traditional gases. Which is that traditional gases? Which is that? Hydrogen and helium. Now if it is hydrogen and helium, can there be existence of life? No. Now if that is the case, complete universe would have been life. Hydrogen and helium are called as first and second atom. That does not mean that it leads to creation of life. For the creation of life, we need to have carbon, hydrogen, and we call it as oxygen are required. 3 are required. Yes or no? But now how to remove this traditional atmosphere? Now it is now. Can we remove via vacuum cleaner? No. Now because it is very intense, no one can reach. But how can we remove this? Now we can remove via the influence of which one? Via the influence of, we call it as the solar radiations, solar impact or solar flares. When it is solar flares, automatically it has a huge impact. When it is huge impact, the primordial atmosphere is being removed. When it is no atmosphere, now automatically all the gases can enter the atmosphere and can exist. Now comes our second stage called as, now even our lithosphere is being created. Now during our lithosphere, even the different gases can escape. Now via the different gases escaping from our interior part of the earth, the different gases are being escaped. Now when the different gases are being escaped from our, we call it interior. Which all gases were a part of interior part of the earth? Which had carbon dioxide, abundantly carbon dioxide. Which had methane, which had, we call it methane, which had, we call ammonia, which had moisture content, all those things. Now all these things are being released from the interior part of the earth, and that releasing part we call as what? Degassing. Now okay, at least will there be life now? Will there be life now? Again it's a challenge, because there is abundantly CO2. 96 to 98% is CO2. Now if it is 96 to 98% CO2, there cannot be existence of life, because it's like a same like a Venus, brightest planet, hottest planet. But now I need to reduce this temperature, it has to lesser one. How can I reduce? Because of higher temperature, all this water molecules it has evaporated, and that led to creation of which one? Clouds. When it is clouds, automatically there must be rainfall. Now when it is rainfall, all the carbon dioxide got mixed with water, H2O. Now it led to creation of, we call it as carbonic acid, and all this is being flown towards, we call it as oceans. Getting it? Now that led to creation of hydrosphere. The present day oceans called as hydrosphere. And along with the things, sir, how it has O2 created. How are O2 created? The O2 is being created via, we call it as photosynthesis. When the temperature reduced, now the CO2 is being absorbed by our plants. Now when CO2 interacts with, we call it as the solar radiation, the outcome will be what? Outcome will be, it has glucose and oxygen. And this complete process we call it as photosynthesis. And when there is photosynthesis, what will be the outcome? Oxygen. Now that led to the creation of present day atmosphere. Yes or no, boss? Is it fine now? Now earlier we had only primitive organisms, but now their existed, we call it as animals. Both are invertebrates as well as vertebrate organisms also. Invertebrate means it does not have which one? Backbone. Now what is vertebrates? Which has backbone. It can be Pisces fishes, amphibians, reptiles, aves and mammals. Done, boss. Is it clear now? Can we note down this first? Done. First one, what is atmosphere? The gaseous substances present around Earth. Gaseous substances present around Earth. Now what is the present atmosphere made up of? Fast. Now I said now we have primordial atmosphere. We had primordial atmosphere. Now what is this primordial atmosphere? What is this primordial atmosphere? First one, primordial atmosphere. Now it was made up of which all things? Hydrogen and helium. Now hydrogen and helium is being removed via which one? Solar radiation. After the solar radiation, automatically there is a release of what we call it as the different gases from our interior part of the earth, and that gases we call it what? It is degassing. That we call it as degassing. Now during degassing, it let release of which one? Water vapors, carbon dioxide, methane, ammonium, and we call it as, and we call lesser amount of oxygen. There is no oxygen from the degassing process. But when will oxygen get released? When will oxygen get released? Oxygen get released only via photosynthesis happens. Now via degassing process through which gases were being outpouring from the interior. We call it as degassing. Now after degassing led to the creation of which one? Led to the creation of, we call it as photosynthesis. Next comes our photosynthesis. Now from photosynthesis, now when this molecules reacts, when CO2 reacts with our solar radiations, now what will be the outcome? Oxygen, glucose and oxygen, and that led to, we call it as present day atmosphere. Is it fine, boss? Now it is first one we call it as first one. Now this is we call it as our lithosphere. Early it is in volatile or the primordial stage. Now in this it is primordial stage, the gradual increase in density and inner temperature. What happens? Differentiation of densities. Air will start to sink towards the center. Lighter will start to flow towards where? Surface. And that led to outer layer, the crust, and inner layer we call it as the core, and that is lithosphere. I've discussed all things. Done. Now, can you note down this? Now, don't write this, but whatever I'm saying, you should write this. First one I said the primordial atmosphere, stage 1. What is stage 1? It is primordial atmosphere. The primordial atmosphere is made up of hydrogen and helium. Primordial atmosphere made up of hydrogen and helium. Now this primordial atmosphere is being removed via, we call it as solar winds or the solar flares. Is being removed via solar winds, or we call it as solar flares. Is being removed via, we call it as solar flares. Is it fine? Second one, stage 2. Now in the stage 2, what happens? Degassing happens. Stage 2, degassing happens. Now what is degassing? Outpouring of the different gases from the interior parts of the earth. Outpouring of the different gases from the interior parts of the earth. From the interior parts of the earth, we call it as what? We call it as degassing. We call it as degassing. Done? Yes or no? Third stage. What is the third stage? Now in the third stage, now existence of primitive life. Which is that primitive life? It is bacteria, fungi, lichens, algae. Yes or no? Now all this undergoes which one? Photosynthesis. All this undergoes photosynthesis. And what is the outcome here? Oxygen. The outcome is oxygen. That's more than sufficient. Outcome is oxygen. All this we call it as oxygen. Clear? Pakka? Done? The third sphere or the third layer, we call it as the third region, we call it as hydrosphere. What does hydro means? Hydro means water, water sphere. Now which one is dominant in our earth? It is hydrosphere. Why it is dominant? Because 70% of our earth is covered with what? Water. 70% of our surface is made up of what? What? Water. 70:30 or 7:3. Water and land. Done. Now this water constitutes dominant. Water constitutes dominant. Now with respect to water, there are three types of water. What are three types of water? What? One is filter water, one is Chireni water, Mori water, and last one? Now it's not river, ocean or something. It is, there are three classification of water that we call it as, it is fresh water, salt water, and we call it as estuarine water. Now, on what basis we have classified water into three things? Based on salt content, based on salinity. Based on salinity, now we classify water into what? Three types. Now, we call it as, now take an example of it is 1 liter bottle. We have 1 liter bottle. Now in this 1 liter bottle, now is that fresh water or salt water or it is estuarine water? What is that? The 1 liter bottle? Now she has 1 liter bottle. Now 1 liter bottle, now how many it is grams of salt we have in that 1 liter of water or 1000 ml of water? Negligible. If it is negligible means 0.001 or minus 0.001%. What do you think? Now based on salinity, based on, we call it as parts per thousand. Now into this 1000 ml of, we call it as water, what percentage of salinity we have? And the second one. Now with respect to this three, which one constitutes dominant? Salt water, estuarine water or fresh water? What percentage? 100%. Then what are we drinking? Are we going for, it is, we call it as, it is majorly we call it as converting this salt water to the fresh water? 50 to 55. Pakka. And only we have only 45% for drinking. What do you think? UPSC question. See, UPSC does not want the mugged up content. UPSC wants the questions. Perfect. It is more than 95% is salt water. I can say 96.5%. And remaining it is 3.5% is both estuarine as well as fresh water. And hardly fresh water is 2.5%. And that too, it is that too in India, it is India constitutes 20% population. But how much fresh water do we have? And that too fresh water is, we call it, okay, fresh water. Now out of this fresh water, where can you get maximum fresh water? How can, where in India I am saying? Is it in river water? Is it glaciers? Is it groundwater? Is it lakes? Is it rainwater? Or it is the moisture content present in atmosphere or the moisture content present in our soil? Okay. What about underground water? Okay. We are using it for agriculture. Now the majority of the fresh water we are using it for agriculture and domestic use. And very minimal we are using it for drinking. And majority of them are polluted. Ganga polluted, Kaveri polluted, Arkavati polluted. Majority of the rivers are polluted. Now we are going for, we call it as pollution of rivers also. That we call it as Namami Gange project. Namami Gange project, we call it as, it is cleaning up of the, we call it river itself. Done? Shall we see all this thing before going to this, or shall we this and that? What do you want? First one basics, and later on we'll go for evolution. First one, hydrosphere done. Hydro means water, sphere means region done. 70% of the water, 70% of our earth is covered with what? Water. 70% of our. Now, where can we experience more biodiversity? Is it in our oceans or in our land? Oceans, obviously. Now, where can we experience more human beings? Land. Hope you're getting it. Human beings is not equal to biodiversity. It is water is equal to biodiversity. The oceans has more biodiversity. Land has what? Land as we call it as lesser biodiversity. Clear? This we need to know with respect to our, this we need to know with respect to our, we call it as major important one. The major important one we call it as our hydrosphere. Done? Now this hydrosphere has been divided into, we call it as three important, we call it as classification based on PPT. It's not PowerPoint presentation. It is parts per thousand. We're getting it. Now it is, now our hydrosphere has been divided into how many? It is divided into three things. Hydrosphere or water, it has been divided into three things. Which is that three things? Which is that three? One we call it as fresh water, salt water, and the last one we call it as estuarine water. Estuarine water. Done. Now in one we call it as 1000 ml of water. If the salt content is, we call it as 5 parts per thousand. Now this parts per thousand is being written in this manner also. This is percentage. If I add one more zero, 1000 parts per thousand, parts per thousand ppt. Now it is less than 5 ppt. Now what should be the salinity or the salt content in our fresh water? Hope you're getting it. If it is more than 5 ppt, can we drink? It will be estuarine water. Yes or no? Now, what is salt water? Salt water means if it is more than 35 parts per thousand, if it is more than 35 parts per thousand, we call it as what? Salt water. We call it as salt water. We call it as salt water. More than 35 parts per thousand. More than 35 parts per thousand, we call it as salt water. Done. More than 35 parts per thousand, we call it salt water. Less than 5 parts per thousand, we call it as fresh water. Now in the range of 5 to 35, estuarine. In the range of 5 to 35, we call it as estuarine water. Now which one constitutes abundant? Now salt water constitutes abundant, 96.5. Remaining 3.5 constitute both our estuary as well as we call it as our fresh water. Done? Clear? And next comes our we call it as evolution of, we call it as hydrosphere. Now how evolution of hydrosphere takes place? With the cooling of earth, water vapor started to condense. Now when it is condensing, automatically leading to creation of clouds? Yes or no? Now when it is condensing, creation of clouds. Now automatically after clouds creation, what happens? Rainfall. Now when it is rainfall, automatically the CO2 which was present abundantly, now this started to mix with what? This started to mix with CO2. When it is mixing with CO2, first one, our CO2 is decreasing. When the CO2 is decreasing, what happens? Reduced temperature. When there is reduced temperature, more condensation, more rainfall. Rainfall collected in a depression. And that depression we call as what? Oceans. Can you note down this? Fast. 30 seconds. Done? Yes? Yeah? Okay. Now this ends our the part A. The part A we call it as evolution of spheres. Now we will go for a little bit mapping and later on we'll start with the part B. Next one, it is yesterday we were discussing about an equator. Now today we will move towards our we call it as the countries which passes through it is Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. Now let us pull up your atlas and observe. Now which all countries passes through first one Tropic of Cancer. What is Tropic of Cancer? 23.5 north. 23.5 north. It is majorly passes through 18 countries. Passes through we call it as 18 countries. Tropic of we call it as Capricorn. Now, which is the only country which passes, or which is the only continent which passes through all that? It is the Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer, and the equator. Africa. Perfect. You got the point. Observe. Now, there must be at least 18 countries. Minimum 15 countries. Done. Tropic of Cancer means what? What do you mean by Tropic of Cancer? Tropic of Cancer means 20.5 north. Tropic of Cancer. Now does Tropic of Cancer passes through India? How many states? 8. Now how many landlocked? 6. How many mainland India? 6. How many coastal boundary? 2. How many northeast? 2. Which is that? Mizoram and Tripura. Coastal? Gujarat and West Bengal. Yes or no? We'll see all the things one by one. See, you should be in a position to say that verse. Please, I have discussed some 2 or 3 times. You are not revising. Yes or no? Now, we'll see one by one. First one. Do you want east to west or west to east? Anything is fine. East to west. Now, east to west is the first ocean we will be getting it here. Pacific Ocean. Pacific Ocean. Capital of Pacific Ocean? What is the capital of Pacific Ocean? Doesn't have capital. Why discrimination? Why continent has capitals? Why not Pacific Oceans? Why? Why not oceans? Because in oceans we don't have any population. That's the reason we don't have any headquarters. If it was population in the future when the population now the people are living underground or underwater, they can be capital. Okay, but that may be just a joke. Next one we got as a Taiwan. First one, observe Taiwan's capital. Go to we call it as a separate map of East Asia. Don't manage in the page number 104 itself. Go to the different continents. Now, which part of Asia is this? Which part of Asia? East Asia. I have discussed yesterday. East Asia. Go to index. Observe Asia, main heading Asia. Under that, East Asia. Last one. Got it? Observe Taiwan. Observe Taiwan. Capital of Taiwan. Taiwan's capital Taipei. Taiwan's capital Taipei. Nothing should be written down in your notes, only in your atlas. No, you did not get. I think page number 56, 76. Okay. Around 60 to 70. On the right hand corner, you will get saying that East Asia. Political. Go to index. Asia continent. Asia, physical go. East Timor, Singapore, North Korea से देखना, अदर देखना, 52. Others. Taiwan. Observe does it pass with particular? Yes or no? Observe is the capital of Taiwan. Capital of Taiwan. No. See, whenever we are seeing with respect to atlas, first and foremost thing is you need to go to the index. Now you will be getting Indian states, Indian thematic one. The continent. First one is largest continent is Asia. Now it is Asia. Observe. Where is China? China, Mongolia, Taiwan. See this? Certain page number. Go certain. See, no point in you turning the pages. Directly go to certain. You will get Taiwan. Pakka. See this? Got it? Now so Taiwan's capital. Taiwan's capital Taipei. Now, which is the strait which is present between the Taiwan and China? Now this Taiwan it is being claimed by China. Under we call it as one China policy. There is only one China, and that China we call as PRC, People's Republic of China. Even they are also claiming Taiwan belongs to us. But Taiwan is saying that we does not belong to any country, we are a separate country. You're getting it? One China, Taiwan, they'll ask a question saying that one China policy recently in news is related to. It is related to, we call it as, it is the PRC China and the Taiwan also. PRC, one China policy. Observe a strait. What is strait? What is strait? Perfect. And narrow water body connecting two larger water bodies. Observe which is that two larger water bodies. Either East China Sea with one, South China Sea. Mark it. Highly important for exams. To the north we call it as East China Sea. To the south, South China Sea. Which is the strait we have? Taiwan Strait. The Taiwan Strait separate which two mainlands? Taiwan with which one? China. PRC China. People's Republic of China. It is People's Republic of China, but they are not republic. That is challenge. They are claiming to be PRC China, but they are not republic. What is republic? Elected by the people, but there is only one party, there is only one, the president also. For him we need to vote. There is no opposition and ruling party. There is only one party. And that party we call it as, it is the PRC, People's Republic of China party. And for that only one president, and that one president we call it as Xi Jinping. Hope you are getting it. It's not Laven Jinping. It is Xi Jinping. There is no opposition also. And the Xi Jinping has amended the constitution saying that I will be the president for life. Nothing but till death he'll be the president. You should only vote for him once in 5 years and he'll be the president. No one can contest, no one can vote for some other person also. And after looking at this, after looking at China, even Putin also said that let me do also. And even the Russian constitution also been amended, saying that Putin will be the president of Russia for the life till death. And automatically these two persons will never die, sir. It is immediately also. It will take a number of years also. Because they are highly secured, whatever the food they are eating, it is very costlier. It is that we got a Gucci mushroom. 1 kg Gucci mushroom is around some 3 or 4 lakh rupees. Gucci mushroom. That Gucci mushroom it is grown only in, we call it as colder regions like Himalayas. Gucci mushroom. And by looking at this, even our Modi also said that let me also eat this. And even Modi is also consuming this Gucci mushroom so that I can be a prime minister for life at least by winning Modi 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, all the things. Done? All the things. We are seeing the trend we are seeing. It is authoritarian governments across the world. Across the world, authoritarian governments, dictatorial form of government, we are seeing the trends. Okay. Next one observe China. China's capital observe. Now in China observe Shanghai. Now in Shanghai we have established SCO in 2001. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. It's a military and security cooperation like NATO. What is NATO? North Atlantic Treaty Organization. To counter that, China has established its own organization called as SCO. India is a part of this. SCO in the year 2001, established in Shanghai, headquarters in Beijing. Hope you're getting it. You're not getting it. Shanghai was on the coast. You will get for sure. No. Go to Asia map. Asia. Vietnam. See this. This is China. You said Taiwan? Yes, China. Complete China. This is complete China. There is a desert. This is the populated China. Observe this on the coast. Shanghai. Observe this. Shanghai. In Shanghai we have SCO. Now established in Shanghai. That's called as Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Observe Beijing, the capital of China. It is star mark. Beijing. Now is it north of Shanghai or south of Shanghai? North. North of Shanghai. Done. Observe Macau and Hong Kong. The Macau and Hong Kong to the deep south of coast itself. Go to Macau and Hong Kong. Now this Macau and Hong Kong has democratic governments. That is the reason it is called as one country, two policy. One country. All this belong to China. But there are two policies. One is dictatorial. And we call it as one is democratic. Hong Kong and we call it as Macau. Hope you're getting it. You will see all this in Hong Kong and Macau majorly in movies. Underworld movies. Hope you're getting it. Nothing but Hong Kong and Macau is majorly famous for, we call it as Benami transactions. Smuggling of goods. FDI investment. Foreign direct investment. Hawala transaction, all those things. We also have HSBC Bank. Hong Kong, Singapore Bank of China. HSBC. Hong Kong, Singapore Bank of China. This bank is considered to be the first bank to establish first ATM. What's ATM? All-time money. Automated television. Automated television in Mumbai in the year 1987. Yes. Clear? China. Now observe China. Now in China, observe, it is a desert called as majority desert. Majority is desert, and observe a desert called as Gobi Desert. To the north, Gobi Desert. Now Gobi Desert is present on the border between which two countries? Mongolia and China. Capital of Mongolia? Ulaanbaatar. Ulaanbaatar, it's a landlocked country. Why it is landlocked? Because it doesn't have a coastal access. Landlocked country. And this Mongolia, it is famous for Buddhism. It is Genghis Khan, Buddhism. Done? Highly modern Eastern countries are famous for, we got a Buddhist religion. Buddhist religion, Mahayana Buddhism, Hinayana, all these things. Done? Now in China, observe Tibet, bordering with India. Tibet. Now the region is being claimed by Tibetan Buddhism. Dalai Lama. They are claiming we want a separate country, bifurcating from China. Will China allow that to do it? Bifurcating from China. Now automatically the Chinese government attacked the Tibetans, and the Tibetans fled the country and they came to India. Automatically they are taking shelter in where? They are taking shelter in India, and we call it as the Lama. The Lama or the Dalai Lama, he is taking shelter in, we call it as Dharmashala. Dharmashala, it is present in, it is Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh. It is present in Himachal Pradesh. We are given a shelter. Now he fled in the year 1957. Now during that period, who was the Prime Minister? It is Jawaharlal Nehru. Now he gave a shelter to Dalai Lama, and they are taking a shelter in India. Are they citizens of India? They are not citizens of India, but they have given only, we call it as shelter in India. Done? Clear? Tibet is fine. Tibetan region. Observe Xinjiang province or Kashgar province. Again bordering with Tibet. It also borders with, we call it Afghanistan, Tajikistan. Yes or no? To the north of, understand my comment, you will get it. To the north of, we call it as Ladakh. To the north of Ladakh, you will get Kashgar region or Xinjiang province. Xinjiang province. Yes or no? If not, you should inform me. Xinjiang province. Go to specific map of China, if not in Asia. Kashgar or Xinjiang. This is India, this is Ladakh, here, this is Western Coast. This province. This province. It's not given in atlas, now I'll show you. highly important one. It is famous for a Muslim called as Uyghur Muslims. Uyghur Muslims. See, if you're not getting it, you should observe and you should. So this is China, the westernmost one. This is Tibetan province. Tibet. This is Tibet. I said this is Tibet. Now to the north of Ladakh. Which one? Xinjiang province. Now in this Xinjiang province, now we have a minority Muslims, and that minority Muslims we call it as Uyghur Muslims. Highly important one. Now this China is planning for CPEC. What is CPEC? China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor starts from Xinjiang province and ends at where? Gowda, Balochistan province and Gowda. Yes or no? But the challenge is, these Muslims are not letting it to construct it. What to do now? Now will the Chinese government keep quiet? No. They have attacked them and now they are fleeing it to some other countries. Majorly to those Muslim countries. Central Asia, they are moving it to, we call it as Central Asian countries. And this Muslims, we call it as Uyghur Muslims. Uyghur Muslims, minority Muslims. They are present in Xinjiang province. Xinjiang up province. Yes. This is, we call it as Hong Kong, Singapore, or sorry, Hong Kong and Macau. This we call it as Taiwan. This we call it as Beijing, Shanghai. Followed by this we call it as which one? This we call it as North Korea as well as South Korea. This is Korean Peninsula. Korean Peninsula. This we call it as Japan. Who getting it? Done. Which is this? Which is this sea called as? This one. It is East China Sea. This is East China Sea and this one we call as South China Sea. Which is the strait called as? Taiwan Strait. Which is this sea called as? LOC. This one? It is Sea of Japan. Between Korean Peninsula and Japan, Sea of Japan. LOC. East China Sea. South China Sea. Taiwan Strait. Gobi. Observe Thaklan-Maklan Desert. Done? Hope you get it. See, Atlas should not be read it in one go, it should be read it in gradual manner. Done? See, you will get to know that and it will read in for the longer period of time also. If you are watching it continuously and the newspaper, it is mandatory, you should read at least newspaper. No one is carrying newspaper. How will you clear the exam? At least you should come early. If the faculty is late, at least some 5 or 10 minutes, you should read newspapers and you should discuss among yourself. Get newspaper, any newspaper, either Hindu, Indian Express or Deccan Herald, Mint, Live Mint, or it can be Financial Express, Economic Times, Times of India. Any newspaper, doesn't matter. Whatever the newspaper is coming to your home, read that. Don't waste the resources. If not, you can download from the online itself free of cost. You can read that. Come early, you can showcase in this board itself. Use that resource. Hope you're getting it. Discuss among yourself, boss. The small things matters more. That should be the impact. See, you will be having at least every day it will be at least some 10 members. Now discuss among yourself. One article, one topic, one person. Some 10 topics. Come early. If it is 10:30, class starts at 10:30. Come at 10:20 or 10:15. I'm literally saying. In this field, it is teaching for some 6 years and in this field for 10 years, last 10 years. I know it is sole-handedly you cannot clear anything or you cannot do anything. Hope you're getting it. Now with consistent effort, with a group, with a collective effort, you can achieve anything. See, newspaper boss, start with something. A particular person will explain that, or create a group, or you will be having it as a group, and it is informed them saying that okay, it is you read this topic, one topic, 10 members, 10 topics, and you give a time saying that only I'll be giving you some 5 minutes or some 2 minutes. He'll research all the important information and he'll express here. Automatically, while he's going for expression, automatically the interview part will also be done. Interview part will also be done here. Expression followed by, we call it as, it is the understanding pulse of the listeners. Hope you're getting it. See, with sitting there, you cannot clear this exam. Sitting there, you cannot clear this exam. You should migrate to this side. And if you think like an officer, think like an examiner. Yes or no? The most important is the newspaper. Every day you should carry a newspaper. Even if you get 1 or 2 minutes, you should observe. At class, every day. Syllabus, every day. And MCQs, solving MCQs. You should install, we call it as the Telegram. Now with the Telegram, you will be getting the PYQs. Every day you will be getting a PYQs. In my channel itself, at least once in a week, I will be uploading all the important recent examination, that is question papers. Today morning also I have uploaded GPPSC, Gujarat PSC examinations. The last Sunday I have uploaded, it is the OPPSC, Odisha's Public Service Commission. That you should solve. You should sit, solve questions. Hope you are getting it. Now without taking any risk, you cannot clear this exam boss. At least if you are preparing for UPSC, at least you will be in a position to clear some other exams also. That should be the game. See, every day it is not like, okay, UPSC. Write all the exams. See, if you have the potential to clear UPSC, my simple question is, why are you not able to clear the other exams? Write other exams. If you are from North India, write all the other exams. If it is South India, write the different exams, the state exams. My simple question is, it is writing should not be a choice. Joining, not joining should be a choice. See, no one can give you an exam-like condition, boss, even if you give 1 CR or 2 CR or 100 CR also. No one can give you that. When you are sitting in an examination, automatically by applying for some 200, 300 rupees, it's fine. You can apply. Go to exam, but the exams will be normally on Sundays. Write the exams, at least some 10 exams. You will get some confidence about geography, you will get some confidence about economics, environment, about science and tech, about current affairs, about how to solve MCQs. And I'm seeing from the last 1 week, no one is carrying newspaper. See, this makes a difference, boss. From newspaper, if you are getting some articles, you should observe at class. Hope you're getting it. See, this makes a difference. Smaller things makes a difference. And don't say that on time illa. See, no one has more than 24 hours, boss. Everyone has 24 hours. Even I has 24 hours, and even you guys has 24 hours. Even coming 1 minute, it is late to the class, even I regret a lot. That is my commitment. And like what to do, like yesterday it was raining, today it was zero traffic. See, that is my commitment. You should also have that commitment. See, giving money and something is different. I have sufficient resources, money done. Not required to teach, that too coming from Vijayanagar, not required. But the thing here is, I want to communicate with students. I want to teach more. And the other reason it is you should also have some commitments. When you have a commitment, when you have a, then bake one answer, you will take an extra shot. Beke bake guru, Vashu Marti Niyanta. Applying, recently they have called for it is AO exams. One of from agricultural background, apply for that. Agri BSc, Agri Forestry, all those things. Anyone from Agri? If not, apply for PC, 4,000 post, HK, non-HK. Hope you're getting it. Nothing bad if you're not in a position to clear this PC exam, how will you become DC? My simple question. Prepare. It's okay even if you're getting some 10 marks, that's fine, boss. But it is, now I'll be judging based on have you written an exam or not. I won't be judging on the basis of marks. See, first one, when you go to an examination, you will forget that fearness. See, when you don't have that fear, you can do whatever you want in the future. Hope you're getting it. Nothing but why I encourage everyone to take up UPSC, because UPSC not only gives you a job, it gives you a life. Why it gives you a life? Because when you are prepared for UPSC for at least 1 year or 2 years, now you will inculcate that resilience. Now when you inculcate that resilience, what can some other person do against you? Can anyone do anything against you? Can someone collapse you? Unless you collapsing yourself? No. No one can do you nothing. Hope you're getting it. That inculcation should start from day one. See, no one will teach you, boss. I can come to class, I can teach you the syllabus, I'll go. But only you can create that positive mindset, positive aura. Now, today I came some 15 or 20 minutes late. Now it is no one is revising, no one is having a newspaper, no one is solving the PYQs. Why are you wasting 20 minutes? That is my simple question. Why? Why? Will you get that 20 minutes extra? And even if there's a lunch break also. It is if you are taking the carriers, see, have that carrier within some 5 or 7 minutes. 7 minutes max, boss. We can do it. 7 minutes. Okay, chalo 10 minutes. 5 minutes washroom done. 15 minutes. Don't think you will be getting some 15 minutes extra. That you should inculcate. No one will give you time. If you respect time, automatically time will respect you. You will be in good position. First is attitude. Second comes knowledge. In UPSC also, knowledge is 40%, attitude is 60%. How you behave, how you inspire others. When you are not able to value the time, how will you value the or how will you value the resource of the government? Yes or no? Now that decides. Now when you become a DC, automatically time is a resource, boss. Time is a resource. When you are not valuing your own time, how will you value the time of others? How will you value the time of the people? How will you value the time of the government resource? If you are not valuing it, will you become a good servant? Civil servant? Will you become a good officer? No. You might be holding a certificate of called as I have cleared IAS or IPS or IFS, but you will never become a good, it is people servant. In the eyes of people. One who respects the time, first thing, resources. It is taking that extra mile. Yes or no? Now when the faculty is coming, when the faculty is sitting there, don't you think you should ask some extra questions also? Hope you get it. Now you should use that things, but you won't use. After geography, I won't come to it is Nittur. How will you communicate with me? And the Saurabh sir, quality, how will you communicate? You should ask at least some 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Don't irritate them, but humbly asking sir how to prepare. Now what 2 things, what all to ask. And every day you should meet sir also. So what's there was, ask them 2 or 3 questions to the sir also. He'll share some experiences. Hope you're getting it. You should ask, sir, you should meet the mentors. It's fine, even if you are wasting time also, it's fine. Worth investing some 5 or 10 minutes. The smaller things makes a difference. The smaller things creates some good officers. Hope you're getting it. Now from tomorrow, at least, it is newspaper is mandatory. At least bring that, boss. You have paid some 70 or 80,000 to the academy and you are not able to invest some 150 or 200 rupees per month. You can invest. If you are going for some Hindu or Indian subscription, hardly some 2,000, it is related for a year, directly to your home. You will get subscription 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. If not, while walking, you can get this newspaper also, Hindu newspaper. Hardly 200 I think per month. Yes or no? Done. And when you are reading your Hindu newspaper, it is read only the important headings in the earlier things, and later on gradually you will get that interest. See, every exam was, be it any examination, majority of the questions are from current affairs. This year UPSC 2026 also not from static, 50% questions are from current affairs and current affairs linked with static. That is the reason I'm saying read current affairs, read atlas. For clearing prelims, atlas and current affairs is more than sufficient. You will get 50 questions. No need to read any subject or the Bible or something. That you should be smarter. And second thing is, second smarterness is you should apply on the ground. When you have a knowledge, apply on the ground. MCQs. Go to some UPSC, it is the PYQs channels which is being created in the, it is Telegram itself. Solve that. You will get some 1 lakh channels for UPSC. UPSC CDS, UPSC, it is we call it as IAS examination, engineering services. You will get state exams. You will get with respect to, we call it as majorly with respect to our, it is the different group C exams. My question is, now will the geography varies from PC to DC? My simple question was. Now even if I am teaching for PC, PSI all the same. There it will be more of actuals. When I am teaching for, we call it as the gazetted officers, the KPSC or KE examinations, or it can be our UPSC. Now what is the pattern here? The pattern will be majorly about, or we call it as more about of analysis, more of we call it as the statement based question, statement based analysis. Yes or no? It is. Now when you are reading about any of the things, when you are solving all the examinations, automatically you are applying your knowledge to the ground. You will get the hints. Okay, how to read about lithosphere, how to read about atmosphere, how to read about it is hydrosphere, that you will get. What is crust? It is solve some 50 questions on crust, solve some 50 questions on mantle, some 50 questions on core part. Now do you think will there be any topic outside the 50 questions? No. Be smarter, boss. It's not a degree exam where you will be reading. No. One class done, sufficient. Second one, directly go to MCQs. And third one, revise it, sufficient. Yes or no? Not required. Reading some GC levels not required. Reading margin percent not required. Reading, I would say, insight is also not required. When you understood a concept about we call as evolution, why do you want to refer to some 100 sources? It is my duty to do it. It's the faculty's duty to do it. They'll compile all the things from NCERT, from reference books, from MCQs. It is their duty. Your duty is to listen to class, apply that to our MCQs. Now, if you're getting any of the extra information, add that to your notes itself. Yes or no? Why aspirants taking 2 to 3 years? Because they don't have trust on anyone. Trust on neither on themselves, neither on the MCQs, neither on the faculty, neither on the academy, neither on the books. They want to keep on researching. Anyways, you have ChatGPT now, we have Gemini also. If you go to AI mode, you will get a number of sources. Keep on. No trust. Are we here to do a PhD here? Are we here to do PhD? That is my simple question. No. If that was the case, I'll give you PhD. 3 months symbiosis, PhD. Or 1 year, IGNOU. You should know what's the outcome. I want to do it here. I want to clear this exam. If I want to clear this exam, those are 3 things you need to know. Class, PYQs. We call it as PYQs means it's not only UPSC, CSC. Complete UPSC stream. NDA, CDS, CRPF, CISF, IES, all those things. And next comes our state exams. See, every week there will be one PS examination. Read that, was that more than sufficient, 100 questions. Geography 15 will be there, polity 15, economics 15, current affairs 15. What will you get other than this? Sufficient. Done? Clear? It is you guys decide. Get that good paper, and you guys decide and get that paper and come to the academy on Sundays and write that paper with an OMR. Hope you're getting it. See, you should take an initiative. Get a printed copy, GPPSC, get a print, write it here with an OMR. Anyway, the OMR academy will give you, right? and let them also work. Give them work. Hope you getting it. See, my simple thing is, see, if you are in academy for the next 10 months, automatically you should use that 10 months very, very judiciously. Yes? Okay. Next one. The next one, after China comes R, which one? China comes R, we call which one? It is Myanmar. After China comes R, Myanmar. Which is the capital of Myanmar? Naypyidaw. The Myanmar. Now, this Myanmar. Observe this Myanmar 2026 question. IMT Trilateral Corridor. IMT Trilateral Corridor. India, Myanmar and Thailand. Observe India, Myanmar and Thailand. Go to Southeast Asia map. Southeast. Go to Southeast Asia map. Go to Southeast Asia map. First. Done. Southeast Asia. Now, India, Myanmar and Thailand. We have a trilateral corridor called as, it is India, Myanmar and Thailand. From Moreh to we call it Bangkok. From Moreh it is, and we call it as Manipur. Go to India map, Northeast India map. Don't close simultaneously, you should run. Moreh, India map, Northeast India map. Northeastern India map, Northeast. Done. Northeast. Observe Moreh. Got Moreh? I hope you won't get it, but if you are getting it, it is very good. Near to Imphal. Moreh. On the border between India and Myanmar. Moreh. Got it? Okay, it's fine. The Moreh, we will move towards Myanmar, and from Myanmar we will be reaching where? We will be reaching where? Thailand. Thailand's capital? Bangkok. Now observe golden triangle. Golden triangle and golden crescent. What is golden triangle and golden crescent? Golden triangle and we call it as golden crescent. Golden triangle and we call it as golden crescent. Now golden triangle and golden crescent comes and we call it as, it is opium producing countries. Opium producing countries. See, if it is not useful, I won't discuss at all. Golden crescent and golden triangle. Recently, Home Ministry now renamed the golden triangle as death triangle. Death triangle, and we call it as golden crescent at death crescent. This is now which one? Death crescent. Does death crescent includes Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan? And that we call it as golden triangle in three countries: Myanmar, Thailand, and we call it as Laos. Now it has also integrated Vietnam also, because it is highly revenue generating. Even Vietnam said that let me join your group. That we call it as opium producing countries, drug producing countries in a simpler manner. Opium means drug. Opium means drug. Will be extracting drug. But India is present on the buffer between the two crescent, to death. Buffer between two death One is death triangle and we call it as death crescent. Opening it. Now will India be good, or it is even India will also convert in death? Because huge amount of opium coming from Punjab and huge amount of opium coming from northeast. Why northeast? And even it is also reaching South India, also Bangalore also. This Bangalore north also. As an impact we are seeing with respect to, we call it as drug trafficking. The drug trafficking is it is prominent because India is present on the, we call it as buffer between the two important, the crescent. Death crescent or golden crescent, and now we call it as major, we call it as the death triangle and we call it death crescent also.
North India open international border.
Which one?
Not Nepal, the open border.
Yes, obviously. From Nepal also it is getting, because we have an open border and we have an all-time friend of it is India, that is Bhutan also. From Bhutan, from Nepal we are getting, it is majorly we call it as the drugs. We are getting human trafficking also being done here. Third one we call it as the fake currency notes. It is reaching, we call it as reaching India. Reaching India. Done, it is called as now death triangle. It's also popularly called as golden triangle. They gave me question, boss. Now consider following statement with respect to we call it as golden triangle or death triangle. But if you are not aware about death triangle, what to do? Now the death triangle it includes India, Myanmar and Thailand. Second option. Now this death triangle is majorly famous for we call it as opium producing countries. Which of the following are correct? One only, two only, both one and two, and neither one. It is two only. Because it does not indicate which one. It does not include India. Clear, boss? Done? Okay. Clear? That is we call it as Myanmar. Now observe. It is Myanmar borders with how many countries? Or Myanmar borders with how many states of India? In a simpler manner, go to northeastern map. Go to northeast map. How many states? How come 5 hours? Four, which is that 4? From north to south or south to west or south to north. First one, Mizoram. Mizoram's capital? It is Aizawl. Blue Mountains, Lushai Mountains. Blue Mountains, Lushai. Next one, Imphal. Now in Imphal we have a Loktak Lake, the world's only floating lake. Loktak. If not, go to specific thematic map. Getting Loktak? It's also called as Kabul Lamjo National Park. Within this Kabul Lamjo National Park, we have Loktak Lake. Now this is the world's only floating lake. World's only floating lake. World's only floating lake. World's only floating lake. Yes or no? World's only floating lake. Done. Manipur. Now in this Manipur, we have a Loktak Lake. Observe this Loktak Lake. Observe, highly important, favorite of the examiners. This is Loktak. Now it is above lake, something is floating. What is that something? Now that we call it as, majorly we call it as the grass materials. We call this grass in Manipur, we call it as fundis. Be cautious here. Now floating lake means our lake is not floating here. Whereas the dead and decay materials, the waste materials are floating, the natural vegetation is floating above the lake. Because of denser nature. Now this, when there is dead and decay material, don't you think the grasses will start to grow? Now to feed on these grasses, the deer population starts to, it has reached there. So, sir, how will they reach here? Because when it comes to the land, it will jump. When it is moving to other location, it will jump. Now this floating one we call it what? Fundis. Floating one we call it as fundis, which is present in where? Loktak Lake. This Loktak Lake is present in which national park? Cable Lamjot National Park. It is present in which state? Manipur. Done boss. Second one. Now will this grass will it be stable like a land or will it be continuously moving? Continuously moving. When it is continuously moving, don't you think this deer will balance its things? Now when it is balancing these things, now for the observers it looks like what? Dancing. And that is the reason this deer is also called as dancing deer. Now this deer we call it as Sangai deer. Sangai deer, it is also popularly called as which one? Dancing. Now is it dancing? Is it doing kuchipudi, kathakali, all those things? No. It is consuming this grass, feeding on this grass. But to balance these things, it is doing motions. And that we call it as dancing deer. And this is also called as Sangai deer. It's a state animal of Manipur. And every year this Manipur government celebrates a festival called as Sangai festival. Most popular festival of Manipur. Sangai festival. Which is the tribals present in Manipur? There are three important tribal groups. One we call it as the three important tribal groups. The most dominant we call it as Metis. The most important tribal group we call Metis. Second one we call it as Kugis. And the third one we call it as Nagas. Perfect. Then the conflict between these two groups led to the Manipur conflict. Manipur conflict over a period of some 3 to 4 years. Because Metis are the dominant one, they are demanding ST status. Now that led to conflict between Metis and we call it as this minority people. Then that led to, you already know, that led to, we call it as the Manipur conflict, and after that union, it is majorly we call it as president rule. And after president rule, now from February, now it has been given to a new CM. It is majorly the new CM now. It is majorly we call it as after all these conflicts. And which state has received maximum number of president rule? Manipur. Maximum number of president rule. Rashtrapatiಗಳ ಆಳ್ವಿಕೆ. It is the president will overtake the administration of we call it as it is the state, and that we call it as president rule. Maximum 11 times. Manipur. Done, boss. Done. The next one. It is what do I say in state is Sangai deer? Endangered. Endangered means less than 2,500 populations are present. Only 2,500 populations are present with respect to we call it as this deer. Done. And it is endemic to Manipur. What endemic? Specific to that locality. It is found only in that region. And such a type of populations we call it as endemic population. Done? Clear? Next one we call it Nagaland. Now majorly we call it as now we have majorly we call it as we have our 4 states. One we call it as Mizoram, Manipur, Nagaland, and which one? Arunachal Pradesh. Done. Arunachal Pradesh. Now only 4 states borders with which country? Myanmar. But it is until 2025 we had an open border even with Myanmar also. We had a free movement regime because there was tribal groups. Now tribals which are present on the border between these two countries. Now can we go for boundary? Can we go for complete sealing, creation of a wall? No, because there are relatives. For us, there is a country. For them, it is a region. Now, by taking into consideration our Indian government as well as Myanmar government, we went for FMR. What's FMR? Free movement regime. Now, from the borders up till 16 kilometers, you can move without any visa. 16 kilometers to Myanmar and 16 kilometers to India. But now we have seen a Manipur issue. Now this Manipur issue, we call it a huge amount of arms, huge amount of bombs, huge amount of ammunition from Myanmar. Now it is by taking into our security consideration, we have blocked this or we have cancelled this. And Ministry of Home Affairs has said that nothing doing now. Even if you have tribals, decide if you want to be in India or go and settle there. Now, it is by taking into the tribal consideration, we cannot compromise our security. Decide, be in India or be in Myanmar. For that, we have cancelled this. 6 years long arrangement ends. Recently, now Union Home Minister Amit Shah announced the government's recommendation to suspend the regime to ensure internal security of the country. Now, what is the FMR? It's a free movement regime, allowed people from both the sides of Indian Myanmar to travel up till how many kilometers? Up till, we call it up till 16 kilometers into each other's territory without a visa. With a border pass valid for 1 year, allowed to stay up to, we call it 2 weeks per visit. But now we have cancelled. Why we have cancelled? Why we have cancelled across 1643 kilometers? Because of security concerns. Security official cautions that in recent months that armed insurgents were using FMR to enter India and to escape the undetected war. Hope you get it. Now this we have cancelled it. And this was introduced as a part of, we call it as 2018 to boost our relationship between India and Myanmar under a policy called as, it is now majorly we call it as, it is Act East policy. Under a policy called as Act East policy. We have cancelled this. Under Act East policy, we have cancelled this now in the year 2025-26. We have cancelled this. Nothing doing. Now we have given it to the specified government also, the government of Manipur also. Now these 4 states will handle it is supposed to be called it as the border related issues also, along with our own minister. Clear, boss? This we call FMR. What is FMR? The free movement regime. Done? Clear? Next one comes after Myanmar. Next one we are moving towards we call it as the Bangladesh. Which is the capital of Bangladesh? It is Bangladesh capital is Dhaka. Now the question is, India shares land boundary. Now with which country to the maximum? Now India borders land boundary with how many countries? Observe how many countries. Go to South Asian map. South Asian map and observe how many countries. Land boundary. First, Now, remember a mnemonic called as Bachpan MBA. Now, it is now highest to lowest. Highest to lowest. Now, India borders maximum with which country? Bangladesh. Lowest, Afghanistan. Second with China, Pakistan, Nepal, Myanmar, Bhutan, Afghanistan. Now it borders how many countries? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now India has the longest boundary with which country? Bangladesh. It is with Bangladesh. Now observe. Now how many states borders with Bangladesh? Observe. How many states borders with Bangladesh? Go to northeastern map. Observe West Bengal. Observe West Bengal. The largest one is West Bengal. To the west. To the north it was by Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. No Sikkim, be cautious. No Sikkim. From clockwise direction, West Bengal. Second one, Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. Kolkata, Shillong, Dispur, Assam Dispur, Shillong, Agartala, Aizawl. Done? These 5 states borders with which country? Bangladesh. Clear? Now which is the boundary or which is the boundary we have between India and Bangladesh? Radcliffe boundary line. Radcliffe boundary. Radcliffe is the boundary commissioner during partition of India and Pakistan. Now earlier this Bangladesh was called as East Pakistan. Before that it was called as East Bengal. And now it is Bangladesh from 1971. Since 1971 Bangladesh is being created. Now which is the river which passes between India and Bangladesh? Observe. Which is the river which passes between India and Bangladesh? 2 rivers. Ganga and Brahmaputra. Now Ganga in Bangladesh called as? How comes? Observe. Padma. Ganga in Bangladesh, highly important I am saying. Ganga in, I have already discussed already and you are saying wrong now. You said Padma, like he said like Jamuna. Now Bangladesh is called as? Bangladesh in Bangladesh, or we call it as Brahmaputra in Bangladesh we call it as Jamuna. When this both integrates, when this merges, we call it as Meghna, and finally draining it into we call it as Bay of Bengal. And the mangroves which are being created by these 2 rivers, the largest mangroves of the world, Sundarbans. Largest mangroves of the world we call Sundarbans. Now observe, the maximum Sundarbans are found in Bangladesh or in India? Bangladesh. 2/3 of Sundarbans are found in Bangladesh. 2/3, 66% of mangroves are found in Bangladesh. The world's largest mangrove population. Why it is called as Sundarbans? Why we call it as Sundarbans? Because we have a Sundari species of mangroves. We have a Sundari species of mangroves. Based on that we call it as Sundarbans. Sundari species. And it is famous for, we call it as Royal Bengal Tiger, RBT, our national animal of India. National animal of India, Royal Bengal Tiger. Clear? Yes or no? Done? Later on we will move towards our which country? We will move towards our, after Bangladesh comes our, it is India. India anyways we have discussed. Now India which passes through we call it as Mizoram, passes through we call it as Tripura, passes through Bangladesh, Kolkata, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Gujarat. Then after this comes our Pakistan. After this comes our, we call it as Pakistan. After this comes our Pakistan. Go to South Asia map. Capital of Pakistan? Islamabad. Capital of Pakistan is Islamabad. Which is the boundary we have between India and Pakistan? Radcliffe, same Radcliffe. Radcliffe boundary line. Done. Radcliffe boundary line. Radcliffe boundary line. We have discussed about LOC, line of control. I have discussed about LOC. And we have also discussed about POK, Pak Occupied Kashmir, Gilgit-Baltistan. We have also discussed about in Arabian Sea. We have a Gwadar port also, Balochistan province. Now Balochistan country, they are demanding a separate country for themselves. Separate country for themselves. We call it as Balochistan province, Gwadar port. Now this Gwadar port is being constructed by whom? It is by, we call it as China. It is by China in Balochistan province of, it is Pakistan. Done. Observe Sir Creek dispute in Gujarat. Sir Creek dispute in Gujarat. You won't get it. Why? Because Indian Atlas will never claim it as a dispute, rather it is claiming as Indian territory. Who getting it? You won't get the dispute in your Atlas because Indian government released, we call it as the maps, they won't claim it as a dispute, rather they'll claim it as their own territory. In Pakistan, they'll claim it as their own territory rather than dispute. Who getting it? Now is POK, Pak Occupied Kashmir, is it Indian territory or Pakistan occupied Kashmir? It is, in reality it is POK, but in the government website, it is my territory. Aksashin also, my territory. Kalapani also, Limpaidur also, Lipu Lake also between India and Nepal. All these are being integrated as Indian territory, but we have a dispute. In the same manner, in our we call it as the Sir Creek also. The Sir Creek, it's a dispute between, we call it as India and we call it as India and Pakistan. In Gujarat sector, Sir Creek. So this we call it as Sir Creek. Now boundary, it is settled by, we call it as finally settled by Government of India. This is we call it as blue dotted line, we call it as demarcated boundary. But now this demarcated one, is this one or is this one? Now who owns this gap? Now Pakistan wants this line, but India wants this line. That led to a dispute, and that dispute we got to what? Sir Creek dispute. Sir, why are they so much interested towards this region? Because in this region we have huge amount of, we call it oil, natural gas, and we got different deposits also. That reason no one wants to settle this. No one wants to settle this. Pakistan claims, give me this as a boundary, and India claims, give me that as a boundary. Because this region is rich with respect to which one? This region with respect to, we call it as, it has oil and natural gas, the rich amount of resources. This we call it as majorly our Sir Creek. It has major present with respect to, we call it as this Gulf of Kutch. Gulf of Kutch or Gulf of Kutch? Gulf of Kutch region. Is it fine? Gulf of Kutch region or Gulf of Kutch region? Next one after India, observe, after India, after Pakistan, observe Oman. Observe Oman. Oman's capital, Muscat. Oman's capital, observe Oman. Oman's capital, Muscat. Yes or no? Oman's capital, Muscat. Now recently between India and Oman we have got a free trade agreement also between India and Oman. Free trade agreement FTA. It's not free of cost, it is minimal cost. Trade is very minimal. FTA. Now in Oman, now Hormuz separates which two countries? Yemen. Hormuz. Strait of Hormuz. Observe Strait of Hormuz. Strait of Hormuz. Strait means a narrow corridor or the narrow water body separating two. That is land masses. Separates Oman with, we call it as Iran. Be cautious, Oman. It's not UAE or Saudi also. It is Oman with Iran. Done? It's a highly choke point. Where 70 to 80% of our oil to the world travels to this choke point. 70 to 80%. Done, Oman done. Next one after Oman comes our, we call it as UAE. United Arab Emirates. It's a United Arab Emirates of 7 provinces. 7 provinces. Out of that 7 provinces, which is the most largest province? Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi is a province, it's not a capital. But we are claiming it as a capital. Abu Dhabi is a province. Capital is Abu Dhabi. The most developed one out of the 7? Dubai. Most developed one is Dubai. One of the most beautiful it is to visit, we call it Dubai. Highly developed. In Abu Dhabi we also have Burj Khalifa. Burj Khalifa, the highest tower of the world. Burj Khalifa. And we also have good ties with India and UAE also. Now in reality, India has a good ties with everyone. Except with China, except with North Korea, except with few countries, we have ties with everyone. Pakistan, China and North Korea. We don't have good ties. And rest, we have good ties with every other countries. Done. UAE fine, it's a aggregation of how many provinces? 7. Out of that is the largest one, Abu Dhabi. The most developed one, Dubai. And next one, observe Saudi Arabia. Observe Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh. In Saudi Arabia, observe Makkah, Medina, the most popular cities of, we call it as, it is Islam on the coast, Red Sea coast. Makkah, Medina, Riyadh. Largest producer of it as petrol is also Saudi. One of the largest producer. Largest reserve holder of oil, Venezuela. 20% of the oil reserves are in Venezuela. That is the reason America want to control the Venezuela. Because if they produce more, automatically it will impact American economy also. Because now one of the largest is also America. If they produce it, automatically they will get impacted. Obviously. OPEC member also. OPEC member, GCC also, Gulf Cooperation Council, OPEC Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries. OPEC also. OPEC Plus also. GCC also, Gulf Cooperation Council. And next one observe, we call it as Egypt. Egypt's capital, Cairo. Where the longest river drains finally. Longest river, which is the longest river? Nile. Observe Nile river, go to African map, you will get all those 5 countries. Done. Go to African map, political or physical, both are fine. Observe Suez Canal. Observe Suez Canal connecting Red Sea with which sea? How come boss? Mediterranean. Red Sea with we call it a Mediterranean Sea. Done. Red Sea with Mediterranean. It's a artificially created canal. Reducing the distance between we call it as Indian Ocean with we call Atlantic Ocean. This being created time in the times of it is British itself. 1860s. Observe to the right of Suez Canal. Observe Sinai Peninsula. Sinai Peninsula here. This is Sinai. This is Sinai. Getting? Got it? East of Egypt. East of Egypt is this. This. Sinai Peninsula. Have you even seen that? This is Sinai Peninsula. What is peninsula? It has three sides under water. Three side water. Three side water. Next one observe. Next one observe. Libya. Libya. Libya's capital. Tripoli. Done. Libya. Next one we call it as Algeria. Algiers. Capital Algiers. Capital Algiers. Algiers. And after this comes our we call it as the major one we call it as our Nigeria also. Nigeria. Getting Nigeria. Nigeria. Observe capital of Nigeria. Done. Next one we call it as. Next one we call it as. After Nigeria, it is all these are Mali, will be getting Mali, Mauritania, and we call it as Western Sahara. All these countries are a part of which one? Observe Sahara Desert. All this comes in Sahara. Observe Sahel region to the south of Sahara. Sahel. Sahel, a narrow corridor to south of Sahara. Sahel region. Now in the Sahel region we are going for planting up of trees, and that we call it as it is Great African corridor, or we call it as green African wall. Great Green African Wall. Getting Sahel? Yes or no? Sahel region done. The next one we are moving towards our, it is we call it as America. We are moving towards our America. Now America comes our, we call it as, observe this, we call it as, the different we call it as the islands. Under these islands we call it Bahamas. Now Columbus reached which island? Bahamas. Columbus from we call it as this one, majorly we call it as majorly from this region. Iberian Peninsula. This Iberian Peninsula. Spain and Portugal. Observe Iberian Peninsula. Go to Europe map and you'll get. Go to Iberian Peninsula. Iberian Peninsula. Yes or no? Go to physical now. You will get. Not reading. Above Strait of Gibraltar. The same one. Left. This. You will get Iberian. You will get. That is Iberian Peninsula, complete one. 3 side water. You will get above Strait of Gibraltar. Now Strait of Gibraltar separates which two countries? UK. There is no UK. UK is here, boss. UK is here. The Strait of Gibraltar is here. UK is here. We never. You should observe our answer. Now, Strait of Gibraltar separates. We call observe here. Strait of Gibraltar separates Spain with Morocco. Spain with Morocco. We have a Gibraltar country, island country. It is belonging to UK. A Gibraltar island belonging to UK. That does not mean it is separating two countries. A Gibraltar island country which is controlled by UK, which is present in Mediterranean Sea. Now, Strait of Gibraltar separate which two countries? Spain with Morocco. Spain with Morocco, not Portugal. Spain with Morocco. Done. And next one, observe Bahamas, observe Cuba, observe Jamaica. In Africa, we call it as North America or Central America. North America or in Central America, go to index, North America. You will get North American island countries, Caribbean islands, Caribbean islands, Caribbean islands, Caribbean islands. This is we call it as the Caribbean group of islands. Caribbean group of islands. Under that, you should know about Bahamas. Observe Cuba, sugar bowl of the world. One of the largest country, we call it as sugar bowl of the world. It is the largest sugarcane producing is Brazil. Traditionally, it is called as the sugar bowl. The largest producer is Brazil. That you should be aware. And next comes our last country. We call which one is this? Mexico. Last country is Mexico. Capital of Mexico? It is Mexico City. Capital we call it as Mexico City. Capital we call it as Mexico City. Done. Capital we call it as Mexico City. This you should be aware. Done. And last one we call it Tropic of Cancer passes through even our Pacific Ocean also. Done. This is about our majorly we call it as now Tropic of Cancer. Now tomorrow we will discuss about Tropic of Capricorn. Done. This is all for today's class. Now in tomorrow's class we will discuss about our second part B, that we call it interior of the earth. Done. Along with that we will also talk about our mapping part also. Simultaneously this both theory and practical should happen. It is hand in hand. That is the reason some half an hour to 45 minutes we are discussing mapping also. Done. This is all for today. Is there any doubts from today's class or from previous classes? Any doubts you can ask? No doubts? Thank you. See you all tomorrow.